problem solving. You hear that phrase a lot, especially in business, and it can feel, well, both good and maybe a bit stressful,
Oh,
right?
definitely. It's like, okay, we need to solve this, but where do we even start?
Exactly. And do you ever feel just overwhelmed by how complex challenges can get?
It's a really common feeling. I mean,
Mm.
business is just full of hurdles. And if you try to tackle them without much of a plan, things can get messy,
Yeah, disorganized approaches often lead to, well, more confusion, maybe even making things worse or just not fixing them properly.
which costs time and energy.
Totally. So that's why today we're going to dive into a more structured approach. Think of it like a roadmap, something to help you feel more in control and actually get better results.
Sounds good. What are we looking at?
We're going to break down this five-step model. It's designed for effective problem resolution, originally thinking about business administration, but
You
honestly,
could use it anywhere, really.
I think so, yeah. You
Yeah.
can apply it in loads of different situations.
Okay, so our mission today, then, is pretty clear. Give you, our listeners, a solid framework, a way to tackle challenges methodically.
We want to equip you with this kind of thinking, inspired by business administration principles, so you can navigate that complexity with more clarity, more confidence.
Okay. Let's get into it. Where do we start?
Okay, step one. And this is the one that people often, well, they underestimate it, I think. It's clearly defining the problem.
Seems obvious, doesn't it? But it's so easy to skip.
It really is. We rush in, try to put out the fires without really understanding what's actually burning underneath. I read somewhere that, like, maybe up to half of project failures, they trace back to poorly defined scopes.
Wow, half. That's huge.
Isn't it? Half the effort potentially wasted right from the get-go.
Absolutely spot on. And it leads to that classic mistake. You attack the symptoms, not the root cause.
Like taking paracetamol for a fever without knowing why you have the fever.
Exactly. Is it flu? Is it sunstroke? The treatment's totally different. And in business, if you misdiagnose the problem, you end up throwing resources, time, money at the wrong things.
And solve nothing in the end.
Precisely.
So, when we're defining the problem, we need to ask some really specific questions, like what is really happening? Not just what we think is happening, but the facts.
Okay.
Who's actually affected by this, directly?
Yeah.
In which specific processes or areas is this thing showing up? And maybe most importantly, what are the consequences? What's the fallout?
Those questions force you to dig deeper, don't they? Go beyond just the surface level annoyance.
Yeah. And getting that clear definition, it's like laying the foundation for everything else.
It really is. It cuts through ambiguity, makes sure everyone involved is actually talking about the same thing.
Which is rarer than you'd think sometimes.
Oh, definitely. And it focuses your effort where it needs to be. It's kind of amazing how often teams jump straight to brainstorming solutions without nailing this first.
And then they wonder why the fix doesn't last. Okay, so once we've got that clear definition, what's step two?
Step two is analyzing the causes. So now we understand the what, we need to figure out the why.
Right, put on our detective hats.
You got it. Time to become objective analysts. We need to gather data, talk to the people involved, use some tools maybe to really diagnose the situation properly.
Okay, tools. What kind of tools are helpful here? Our sources mention a few.
Yeah, a few good ones. First up, SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
SWOT. Isn't that usually for, like, overall business strategy?
It often is, yeah, but it's surprisingly useful for problem analysis too.
How so?
Well, it gives you that big picture view, internal and external. By looking at your own strengths and weaknesses and then the outside opportunities and threats, you can see how these might be contributing to the problem.
Okay. Like a weakness in communication could be causing project delays.
Exactly. Or maybe there's a market opportunity you're missing
Yeah.
because an internal process, a weakness, is causing customer complaints, which is the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
It connects the dots.
Okay, that makes sense. What else? Cause and effect diagrams? Ishikawa. Fishbone.
That's the one. Fishbone diagrams, they look a bit like a fish skeleton, hence the name. They're great visual tools.
How do they work?
You put the problem at the head of the fish. Then the main bones coming off the spine represent categories of potential causes. Things like personnel, methods, materials, machinery, environment, the usual suspects.
And then you brainstorm specific causes within each category.
Precisely. You map out all the potential factors systematically. What's really neat is how seeing it laid out visually like that can often spark insights, reveal connections you hadn't thought of.
Cool. And the last technique mentioned is the 5 whys. Sounds very simple.
It is simple, but incredibly effective sometimes.
So you just keep asking why.
Pretty much. You ask, why is this happening? Then whatever the answer is, you ask, well, why is that happening? You repeat it usually about 5 times, maybe more, maybe less.
To drill down past the symptoms.
Exactly. You peel back the layers of causality until you hit the fundamental root cause. That example of the recurring machine breakdown.
Yeah.
After going through the 5 whys, they found it wasn't the machine itself or maintenance. It traced all the way back to one specific gap in the training for a new operator. Something easily missed otherwise.
Wow. So simple, but it gets you there.
It forces you to keep digging.
Okay, so the main goal of all this analysis, SWOT, fishbone, 5 whys, is to get a really complete picture, right? Understand the direct causes, the indirect factors, maybe even external stuff playing a role.
Spot on. Without that deep dive, you're just treating symptoms. You risk putting, superficial fixes in place that don't last because they don't tackle the real origin.
Like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg, as you said earlier.
Exactly that. It might cover it up for a bit, but the underlying issue is still there.
Right. So we've defined the problem, we've analyzed the heck out of the causes. Now what? Step 3.
Now we get creative. Step 3 is generating potential solutions. We've understood the why. Now it's time for the how. How can we fix this?
And the key here seems to be potential solutions, plural.
Absolutely crucial. Resist that urge to grab the first idea that pops into your head. A good process encourages generating multiple options, exploring different angles.
Okay, how do we encourage that creativity? The material mentions a few techniques again. Structured brainstorming. How's that different from just, throwing ideas around?
Well, structured implies putting some framework around it. For example, you might have everyone generate ideas individually first, before sharing, or maybe focus the brainstorming on specific categories of solutions, like short-term fixes versus long-term systemic changes.
Ah, okay, so it channels the energy a bit, avoids just chaos or one person dominating.
Exactly. It helps ensure you explore different avenues and maybe overcome those initial creative blocks. It's about making the brainstorming more productive.
Gotcha. Then there's benchmarking, comparing ourselves to others.
Right. Benchmarking analysis. How does this help find solutions? Well, it lets you learn from others who've likely faced similar problems.
So looking at best practices.
Yeah, in your industry, or even in totally different sectors sometimes. You might find really innovative, efficient solutions that you just wouldn't have thought of internally. It's like strategic inspiration.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Say a restaurant is struggling with long customer wait times. They could benchmark against, those super efficient, fast casual places to see how they manage queues and order flow. Pick up some process improvement ideas.
Makes sense. And the last suggestion is consulting internal or external.
Yep. Sometimes you need fresh eyes. Getting input from experts, whether they're in a different department in your own company or they're external consultants with specialized knowledge, it can bring completely new perspectives.
They can see the forest for the trees, perhaps?
That's a great way to put it. They're not bogged down in the day-to-day weeds of the problem.
Okay. So the big takeaway for this stage, generating solutions, is quantity over quality initially.
Definitely. Get as many options on the table as possible, explore diverse ideas, even seemingly wild ones.
Because you never know where the breakthrough might come from.
Exactly. More alternatives just increases the odds of finding something truly effective and maybe even innovative. We'll worry about filtering and choosing the best one in the next step. Sometimes a slightly out there idea sparks a really practical solution you refine later.
All right, speaking of the next step. Step 4. Select and plan the best solution. Now we switch gears from creative to analytical.
Correct. We've got our list of potential fixes. Now we need to evaluate them carefully using objective criteria to pick the winner.
Okay, what are those key criteria we should be weighing up?
Well, first off, feasibility, both technical and economic. Can we actually do this? Do we have the tech, the skills, the budget? Is it realistic?
Makes sense. What else?
Impact. How will this solution affect our overall organizational goals? Will it move us forward, or could it accidentally mess something else up?
Good point. Need to think system-wide.
Definitely. Then there's the implementation timeline.
Yeah.
How long will this actually take to put in place? What are the implications of that time frame? Is it quick win or a long haul?
Right. And risks.
Absolutely. Got to assess the risks associated with each option. What could go wrong during implementation? What are the potential downsides if it doesn't work as planned?
So, weigh up feasibility, impact, time, and risk. Once we've done that and picked our best bet, we're not done yet, are we?
Not by a long shot. Choosing the solution is important, but planning the execution is critical. We need a detailed action plan.
Okay, what goes into a good action plan?
It needs specifics. Who is responsible for what task? What resources, people, budget, tools are needed? What's the timeline? We need clear deadlines.
And crucially,
Yeah.
how do we know if it's working?
Exactly. You need evaluation metrics. How are we going to measure success? Without that, you're flying blind.
So defining those key performance indicators or KPIs.
That's it. KPIs that let us track progress and see if the solution is actually delivering the results we expect. For instance, if the original problem was falling sales.
A KPI might be the percentage increase in sales next quarter after you roll out the new strategy.
Perfect example. You need something measurable to track against.
Okay, which brings us neatly to the fifth and final step: execute, evaluate, and adjust. Action time.
Action time, yes, but also learning time.
Yeah.
Disciplined execution is vital, obviously. You have to actually do the plan,
Yeah.
but it's not just fire and forget.
Right. You need to keep watching it.
Yes. Implement regular reviews. Check in on those KPIs you defined. Are we on track? Is it working as expected?
And you mentioned feedback mechanisms being essential.
Hugely important. What are we learning as we implement?
Yeah.
Parts of the plan not quite working out. Are there unexpected side effects?
So it's about being ready to adapt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Feedback fuels continuous improvement. Thinking like an administrator means accepting that even the best plan might need tweaking. Maybe your initial assumptions were slightly off. It happens all the time.
Yeah. The real world has a habit of throwing curveballs.
Doesn't it just? The business environment changes constantly, so you have to be willing to adjust your strategy if the results aren't there or if circumstances change.
It's that constant learning mindset, isn't it? Nothing's carved in stone. The ability to adapt and improve is key.
Precisely. So this whole five-step model, it's not really a strict linear thing you do once and forget. It's more like an iterative cycle.
Ah, okay. So the evaluation in step 5 might send you back.
It could easily send you back to reanalyze the causes if the fix didn't work, or maybe even back to generating new solutions if the first choice proved unworkable. It's a loop.
Right. Okay, so let's recap quickly. The 5 steps are: 1. Define the problem clearly.
2. Analyze the causes thoroughly.
3. Generate a range of potential solutions.
4. Select the best solution and plan its implementation carefully.
And 5. Execute the plan, but constantly evaluate and be ready to adjust.
That's the framework. A really powerful structure for tackling pretty much any challenge.
And applying this model consistently, what are the big benefits?
Well, the obvious one is just solving problems more effectively. But it also tends to reduce costs. You avoid those mistakes and waste of efforts from improvising.
Okay, what else?
It fosters a better culture, I think. A culture of analysis, of data, of continuous improvement within the organization. And it makes the whole operation more adaptable, more resilient to change.
Which all ties back to that idea I mentioned earlier, thinking like an administrator.
Exactly. It's about being data-driven, using strategic analysis, focusing on results you can actually measure, results that are sustainable.
So it's not just about fixing the immediate fire, it's about building better fire prevention for the future, maybe.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. Adopting this mindset doesn't just solve today's problem. It strengthens your overall strategic thinking and helps you grow professionally too.
So a final thought for our listeners. Maybe think about a problem you're facing right now, big or small.
Yeah, how could applying these 5 steps help you approach it differently, more systematically?
Even just starting with step 1, really taking the time to clearly define that problem. See how that alone might shift your perspective.
You might be surprised at the clarity and the sense of control it can bring. Give it a try.